Like humans haven't aligned for so long, and we're somehow expecting an AI to be alignable. The advice is usually like, okay, detach yourself from work, find a hobby, like do a hobby that you really enjoy doing. And then here I'm sitting, having turned all of my hobbies into work. But for certain things, you might want to use something that is more scalable, where you can zoom in however far you want, and it's not going to get blurry or pixely. It's just going to stay, crisp, no matter how much you zoom in. And so that style of graphics is usually called vector graphics. Like sleep is kind of like a magic drug. It's the magic pill to fix your stuff.
Hello everyone and welcome to Wookash Podcast. This time I'm joined by Freya Holmér. You may know her from stellar high-quality videos on math and shaders. She also developed famous Unity plugins, ShaderForge, which is a node-based shader editor predating Shader Graph, but also Shapes, a vector graphics library for Unity. And now Freya is working on 3D modeling software, fine-tuned for processes of game developers. So with that, let's meet Freya. What do you see as your main occupation?
Honestly, I don't know. It's very hard to pin it down to a single thing at this point. It's really difficult. Whenever someone asks me, like, "Oh, so what do you do?" I don't really know what to answer because I usually it's just like, "Oh, well, I'm an independent technical artist," which that doesn't really say much. I think most people, even game developers, barely know what that means. So, um, I'm not sure. I guess I am within the technical artist sphere. I do a lot of stuff related to shader programming, mathematics, do a lot of animations and videos. I do educational content around game development. And yeah, that's vaguely what I do right now, on top of working on tools for game developers. So I do tools programming as well. Occasionally, I do freelance work within the games industry, usually within technical art as well. Um, and I have been in the games industry for how old am I? I think around 13 years at this point. So yeah, I've sort of moved over to doing a lot more content creation stuff now, rather than just doing game development. So now it's kind of a mix of both.
So when do you wake up and sit in front of the computer? How do you decide what do you do?
A combination of stress and what I feel like doing, what I feel like I have to do. I don't know. It's really on a day by day basis, because I'm very much driven by my motivation. I have always had a hard time working on things that I'm not motivated by. If I'm not motivated by something and excited to be working on something, it is really, really, really hard for me to do that thing. But if I am motivated, it's much easier, and then I can spend however long I want on that thing, right? Um, and so quite often for me, I always have like at least 3 projects going at once, and then every day is like, I just vibe on which one I wanna do, and then I start doing that one. So what do I have right now? So right now I'm working on Half Edge, a 3D modeling tool. I'm usually working on some kind of video or a talk. So recently I did a talk at the Nordic Game Jam. So that was a talk I was working on for, that was a few weeks of work just making the slides and all of the animations for that. I have a 3D printing project. I'm printing like little transformation gizmos. They're very, very often used in game development. These like 3 axes, the red, green, and blue axes. So that's a 3D printing project, and um, that is a lot of work. And I just realized I had the wrong dimensions on some object. And so now I'm like trying to recover from that error to fix my 3,000 incorrectly printed parts. And so,
What?
so that's a
What?
project. And then what else do I do? Oh, I'm a Unity plugin, Shapes, which is the one I'm least excited about right now, and the one I'm the most behind on. And so I really, really should be working on it, but it's really, really hard to get motivated. And then there's my inbox, and I don't like working on my inbox either. That's my least favorite project, I think, of all.
Inbox, you mean the administrative stuff or?
Yeah, my emails, all of my
Okay,
emails, and all of that. Yeah.
okay. So when your motivation runs out on one project, you switch to the other one.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay, okay, okay.
That's how it goes. And I think there's Um, my issues around work is mostly that I usually work too much, and I need to find strategies to not work sometimes. Like there was a period in my life where I hadn't played any games for 2 years, maybe. Like barely watched any TV series or movies. Just been like working, and I think I think you kind of get locked into a really bad mindset. Like humans are generally not very healthy when you're in the same environment every day, in and out. That's usually a very bad idea. And it's easy for me to get stuck in those moments. And so, yeah, I've been burnt out twice, and I don't want to get burnt out again because you lose years of your life when you get burnt out, and so that's usually my problem that I have to try to mitigate, work around, find strategies for. Yeah.
And the first burnout was when you were working on ShaderForge.
Budget cuts. That was
Budget cuts.
the
Okay.
yeah, the video game, not the financial action, I guess.
Yeah.
No, that was when we were working on budget cuts at the at Neat Corporation, which was a studio that I co-founded a few years ago.
Okay. Okay. When you say that you work too much, when do you know that you work too much?
Usually that's kind of the problem with burnout is that you don't usually notice it until it's too late because um, well, there's a bunch of different factors. One is how well are you able to tell when you're stressed? I'm generally pretty bad at noticing when I'm stressed. And the oh, what was the other thing? I was just going to mention two things, and then I forgot the other one. Um, Sorry, what was your question again? Repeat it. I just
When
completely left my mind.
when do you know when you work too much? Because you mentioned that you get burnout, and you said then it's tricky to know where you're stressed, and you don't realize
Mhm.
when you're getting stressed, and then
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It's really difficult because I don't know. It was especially difficult in my case because I was um I think a lot of people have this misconception about burnout that burnout is when you're tired of your job and you don't like what you're doing and you don't really have any motivation. Usually, that's not what burnout is. Usually, burnout means that you are um, putting a lot of pressure on yourself to always perform at a level that you're not actually capable of performing at. So usually what the problem is that you're putting way too much pressure on yourself and you're doing way too much more than you're like physically and mentally capable of. And that is usually what leads to burnout. And the thing that's very insidious about burnout is that it's very common to be productive through means of stress. Like you stress yourself out in order to be productive. You put up deadlines that you don't technically have to follow, but that might actually help you get motivated, which is it's a form of stress, right? And in some cases that can be a good type of stress, sometimes called eustress, which is fine. But sometimes that can turn into the negative stress, which is a stress that you can't actually keep up with. And so what burnout really is that you have usually unintentionally created a kind of paradigm or a habit of pressuring yourself at all times in a way that's not healthy. And unlearning habits is really difficult, which is why burnout is especially difficult to deal with. So for me, when I'm overworking, it's not like a conscious process of, oh, I'm going to work so much today. I'm going to be like on the grind or whatever. Like that's not my thought process. My thought process is like, oh, I'm excited about my project. So I'm just going to continue working on my project because I really want to make progress on it. It's a really cool project. And then repeat that for like, back to back over day after day. And I'm not working on any other projects. And like, it's hard for me to notice that I'm stressed because I'm technically doing my dream job. I can choose what I want to work on, and I'm doing those things. And so, of course, I can't get burnt out working on my own projects, right? That's absurd. Like, that's not possible. Um, I thought, but then clearly, it is possible, and that. That is a really it's a really toxic thing that can happen, and, I went to rehab for this, and what was kind of annoying at rehab was that it was a group program for burnout specifically, and one thing that was kind of annoying was that, a lot of the tips and whatnot, they were useful, especially, in talking about sleep. Like, I didn't know that sleep was that important until I went to rehab and they talked about sleep. Anyway, so one of the things that was kind of annoying for my case was that, one of the biggest solutions to burnout is to detach yourself from work. You need to take a step back and get perspective on your life and not constantly be in the habit of doing the work that caused the burnout. Um, and so the advice is usually like, okay, detach yourself from work and then, find a hobby. Like do a hobby that you really enjoy doing. Like do some crafts or creative stuff. And then here I'm sitting, having turned all of my hobbies into work. And those are the projects that I'm doing. And so I'm like, well, this is the thing I'm doing for fun. I am having fun, okay? This is fun, right? I'm doing this every single day. And so what am I supposed to do? And so, yeah, it's a really weird situation because most people there are not in that situation. Most people there are, they're employed at some other workplace. And so detaching there is about like, that's a negotiation with your boss and your manager and like finding healthy ways to engage with work and like so there a lot of the rehab program was about like, oh, this is how you can talk to your manager and some strategies and here are some guides you can give to them. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm my own manager. I'm just arguing with myself at this point and I'm the problem. Like yeah, I don't know.
how,
So that
how,
that was that was
how,
pretty rough.
how did you get out of it then?
Um, well, it's hard to know if I'm fully out of it. I would like to think that I'm mostly out of it now. The the number one thing for me that radically changed for me was sleep. I had horrible sleep. The like what happens when you have burnout is that you have stress hormones in your body all the time. And so you have what's it called? Cortisol.
Cortisol, yeah.
You have a bunch of cortisol in your body, and what is very common when you're burnt out is that you have a hard time falling asleep at night because you have a bunch of cortisol in your body. And then once you wake up, you also have a hard time falling asleep because your body again is waking up in fight or flight mode. And and so what happened to me was that, I would go to bed at midnight and then I would fall asleep at like 2 a.m. And then I would wake up at like 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. And I would be like, oh, well, I guess I'm feeling pretty awake. I guess I'll just get up and start doing stuff. Um, and so I didn't like think beyond that. I was just like, well, that's probably fine. If I'm not feeling tired, I don't need sleep. That was my logic, right? Um, but that's not how it works. If you have, an imbalance of serotonin, right? Then your body is basically sending you the wrong signals. And so getting my sleep in order was probably the biggest thing. So yeah, they were basically telling us that um, your all of your day's activities and all of your impressions you get during a day, it's kind of like you have a desk of all of your stuff. And all of your impressions are put on the desk and like you're filing everything there, you're putting everything in piles, all the stuff you're working on and thinking about is on that desk. When you sleep, that's when your brain is processing everything on that desk and filing it away in your brain and like storing all of your memories and processing everything that happened during the day. If you don't get enough sleep, you are going to wake up with a messy desk, and then it's going to be harder for you to put more things on that desk and doing all the work that you want to do that day. And so you get this like accumulation of garbage that just makes you feel stressed all the time. It makes you lose track of things. You have bad memory because you
Yeah.
don't get enough sleep, and there's so many like negative effects that come from that. And I didn't really have that perspective until then, that sleep was that important. I was always like, as long as I'm not tired, I'm fine. But yeah, no, you actually do need sleep. You need like 7 to 9 hours of sleep. You need those hours. If you don't get those hours, you need to get those hours. And they, at rehab, they were telling us that like all of the other things that you might consider doing to fix your burnout, they're going to matter significantly less than sleep. Like sleep is kind of like a magic drug. It's the magic pill to fix your stuff. And so,
Yeah.
um, yeah, it really like hammered home like just how important that was. And so, yeah, that was really good.
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
I'm one of the lucky ones where the melatonin pills, the
Yeah.
sleep hormone. Uh, I'm one of the lucky ones where those actually worked really well for me. I know that for some people they don't seem to work much, but for me they worked really well. And so um, it was like it's so stupid, but um, like the first time I took that melatonin pill, and I was like, okay, I'll try it and see what happens. It takes like an hour for it to kick in, and I like, when it kicked in and I started getting tired, I was like, "Right, this is what it feels like to be tired." I forgot what it was like to be tired. Like, I just hadn't been tired for, like, 2 years, and so, yeah, it was a really bizarre experience to kind of be reminded of that.
Yeah.
Um,
Did
yeah,
they
strange.
recommend the book Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker?
They might have, they didn't talk about book recommendations that much, but I
Okay.
have heard about the book, yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't read.
This is a great read for these kind of subjects, like about the two processes that are being fixated on the sleep, like how it works under the hood. It's an awesome read.
I
Uh,
heard a lot of good things about it. I've also heard people say that it's terrifying.
Terrifying.
Uh, yeah,
I
like you're learning things that you're like, "Oh shit, okay," like kind of feel like you're almost got hit by a truck but didn't, and but yeah.
yeah, they, for example, run the studies about how the shot of vodka impacts your cognitive abilities while you're driving, and compare that to like
Oh,
distracted from sleep, like
mhm.
just like
Oh,
just
yeah, it's
like
like super
sleep
similar.
distraction, and like shot
Yeah.
of vodka was like easy compared
Mhm.
to sleep distraction. But yeah, yeah, a lot of
Yeah, it's
fun
actually
fun
wild
stuff.
how much it affects you, yeah.
So I can't imagine you like three hours a day every day for a week. It must have been quite
Mhm.
difficult to function.
Yeah, I mean, it was mostly fine-ish, and I got used to it, and so it was just normal, and so if you don't have a frame of reference, then, what am I supposed to compare it with, you know? Um, yeah.
I wanna talk to you about the content creation aspect.
Mhm.
You are known for so many such high quality tutorials on arcane topics like shaders. And I think your one of the videos to like introductory video has like 1 million views on YouTube.
I have a few different ones. I have some like live lectures and courses that I taught. So I have a shader course, math course, and a tool development course. So those are actual courses that I taught at the school here in Stockholm called Future Games.
Okay.
And then and then I also have my two videos about math. It's a video about splines and a video about Bezier curves. So those are animated videos rather than courses. Yeah.
Where did you find this idea and inspiration and motivation to keep going? Because it takes a lot of effort to do it, especially with the wild, nice animation that you do. So, how did you find the motivation and the inspiration to do all those videos, keep them at so high quality, and then do this again and again? Because it actually like you've compiled such a huge library of resources for all this arcane stuff.
I think the animated videos are a little bit different from my courses. So the courses, that was kind of like, anytime I did a course at Future Games, the game dev school, I always asked if I could record it because it's going to be useful for other people, so why not? And but then for my animated videos, I have only done two, I think. And then most of my other animations have been for talks that I give. So those haven't really been like fully animated videos in and of themselves. I think after the spline video, I think I realized that I took way too much work upon me. That was one of the that was around the time I had my second burnout. Because I don't know why. I have this like really, really um, toxic level of perfectionism that is it's preventing me from releasing things, or it's making me work on stuff for way too long. And so it can be good to have like I don't know. I think it's good to have an eye for quality. I think that's just a positive thing. But perfectionism means that you are unwilling to let go of things until they are perfect in your mind. And that unwillingness is just detrimental. There's nothing good that comes of that. And so yeah, so in terms of my like all of my like animated videos, I haven't really quite found a way to like scale that in a way for making more videos. So most of my work after those have been to just incorporate some of my animation work in other work, like my talks. Um, and so yeah, but otherwise, in terms of like keeping my motivation up to do things, I think having motivation to do stuff has never been the problem for me. I always have motivation to do things, and because of the stuff that I do, I'm just always interested in whatever I work on. It might not be what other people want me to work on though. I have had so many people that are like, I don't know, oh, can you make a Unity course for like how to use the input system? And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to do that particular thing. Like, maybe I could one day, but right now I don't have an obsession with the Unity input system. Um, and so it kind of just depends on like where my interest is going in the moment, kind of like a moth hitting a light bulb over and over again until something creative comes out the other end. Yeah, that's
But the
that's like,
the classic motivation, uh, let's say, quickly evaporates. You start doing something, and it's like, oh, now it's not the cool part because now I know how like the novelty runs out quickly, and now
mhm,
you want to do something else. But to do the spline video, you need to come back over and over again. If you just switch,
mhm.
it's like you need to maintain this. So I was wondering whether you have some sort of habits that will pull you in back to this video that like requires a lot of work, or even the animations that you like say, oh, just animations for the talk, for your talk about the math, like the math techniques that are cool. I don't remember the exact title.
Oh, the one about the remap function, the
Yes.
inverse lerp and remap. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That must have took you hours to prepare all the animations there because they're like layered and
Oh,
oh,
that one. No, I don't think that one. That one's like some of my earlier stuff. I don't think I'd spent too long on those. Like I spent way more time on the lerp smoothing video.
okay.
That talk was way more work. I think for that one it was mostly recording some shader stuff for some of those animations there. Yeah, so that was way less work than the other ones. But I mean it was work, of course, yeah. I think I think I just um, I mean, I enjoy animating. I like making animations, and so like a big part of like what motivates me to continue moving forward is like, say it's a spline video, and I'm working on some part of the spline video, and then I know that I have some section of the next part where there's a really nice thing I want to explain in that part of the video, and I want to make a nice looking animation for that, and I just enjoy the artistic side of setting that up. Like I want to make it look pretty. I want to make sure that the composition works and the colors work and that, the narrative up until that point is built to that particular visual. Like there's a lot of thought that goes into that part. And I enjoy that. I think that's fun. The the less fun parts of animation is probably the stuff that I shouldn't animate in the first place. Now that I'm thinking about it, like after the fact, like for the spline video, I don't know why I was so obsessed with this. I didn't want to have any footage of like my face anywhere in the video. I wanted it to be just the animations. Um, but what that means is that I wanted to have clean transitions between every section. So I wanted the video to be entirely continuous, which means that there's going to be a lot of like transitionary animations that, like, one, they take a lot of time. Two, there's not a whole lot of creativity. Like there's a little bit of creativity for like the order in which I remove elements, and I can do it in ways that are more interesting or less interesting. And three, nobody cares about these animations. Nobody. Like it's just me. Like I don't know. There's going to be like a few people that are going to be like, oh, it's so high quality, and like people like that. That people do like that. It's not like they don't like it, but it also really doesn't matter. Um, You get this like when you push for quality, you get such diminishing returns. Like once you hit like the top of the quality that you're about to make, like you get so little value out of it for the amount of effort that you put into it. And I'm starting to realize that like I need to let go of that. I need to stop like obsessing over making every transition as perfect as possible in these videos. And so like for example, I could if I could just be like, okay, I'm gonna take those like golden nuggets of animations that I really want to animate that are gonna be really fun to work on, and then between those, I could just have me talking, and that's gonna be significantly easier to make. It's gonna take, the time it takes to make that is gonna be the duration in which I talk plus, the time it takes to edit that footage, which is significantly less than all of those animations. Um, and so going forward, I'm I'm considering like trying to find a better balance there of doing exactly that. Like I animate the things that I really want to animate and the ones that require animations, and then I can talk over the rest pretty much. Because I think people are pretty lenient with that stuff. I think I'm judging my work significantly more than other people are judging my work. So I just
Yeah.
need to get out of my head.
Was this the technique you used for the AI video, the newest one?
The AI video was kind of the polar opposite, intentionally so. For the AI video, I or if you're, I'm not using the same technique as I used for the spline video, but the one that I'm talking about now, where I want to intentionally let go of things. So for the AI video, um, I was I was just frustrated the day before I recorded that video, and I was like, you know what? Tomorrow I'm going to record a video about my frustration. And so I did. I was just like, turning on the camera, like trying to set up some kind of okay lighting, and then be like hitting record and then rambling for like 4 hours. And then, the couple days after that, I just edit my ramble into a video. Um, so that was like the opposite of like polishing something, right? And like some of that footage, for whatever reason, my computer decided to just drop the footage to like 1 FPS for like, I don't
Yeah.
know, like 10% of the footage, which is like nearly unusable. But I was like, okay, I'm gonna release the video with this awful footage. I'm just gonna do it to like force myself to suffer through this imperfection. and um and then once I released the video, like I don't think I've seen a single comment about the lagginess or in those choppy sections. Nobody cares. And I mean, I think people do care, but they don't care enough to comment about it because there's other things in the video, right, that people have opinions about and care about. And so, um, yeah, I think that was like, it was sort of an experiment for me to make myself logically, I know that I don't have to be perfectionism and I shouldn't be, but emotionally, I need to feel the fact that I don't have to be, and so this was like one step in that direction of trying to get myself used to that.
Okay.
Um, but yeah.
Okay. Okay. Did it work then? Like, do you feel the difference now?
Um, Not entirely, no. I think the problem is that um I think the problem is that because the video was set up to very much intentionally be an edited ramble, I think I treated it a lot more like a stream than a pre-recorded video. Um, and if it's a stream, or yeah, if it's a stream, then the expectations are lower. If you as a viewer can tell that this is a improvised ramble, then your expectations are just lower. But if you can tell that this is a highly edited video that someone spent weeks on, then your expectations are going to be higher. And I think that's sort of a little bit the problem there, because I framed the video intentionally to make it clear that this was a ramble in a way that I probably wouldn't if it was like a highly edited video. Um, but I haven't quite worked out if those expectations are my own expectations of myself or my own imagined expectations that other people have on me that I know are imagined, because I haven't gotten this feedback from other people. So it's still just me, but through imagined other people. And it's one of these two. I haven't worked out which one it is, but yeah.
Okay. Can we stop a little bit at the AI video and talk a little bit about the content? Uh, I don't
Mhm,
want to put it at the end of our discussion because it might be negative, but I wanted to touch on that.
mhm,
You made a case about AI slop eating everything in the
mhm.
creative space, and that it's getting worse and worse. What was, maybe you can deliver that point more elegantly than I did just now, and then talk a little bit about what was the impact of the video? What were the comments? What have you seen people say about it?
Um, so I wanted to talk about AI from, I think I've always been pretty against generative AI specifically. And I've been sort of seeing a lot of discussions about it from, various angles, if you're pro AI or anti AI or whatever. And I think a lot of the conversations around AI bothered me in the way that most of the arguments that people use against AI, especially like AI generated art, I think they're kind of missing the point. And I wanted to kind of fill in that gap because I do feel like there is a gap in, what it is specifically about generative AI that I don't like. And so for example, like one thing that people talk about a lot when it comes to generative AI is for AI art, for example. Um, One argument is that some people say that AI art is ugly, like it looks bad, it's shitty, it's just like vapid or whatever. I don't entirely buy that argument in terms of like if that would make me like or dislike AI. Because let's say the AI did make stuff that did look better, I would still be against AI. And so clearly that's not my heuristic for what I like or dislike about AI. Because if they solved that problem, if AI actually did give you a really good output, I would still be against it. And so I had this process of like going through every single one of these until I boiled it down to like refined it to the most pure thing that I can't like deconstruct as far as I can tell, right? And so another example, AI is draining our resources in terms of energy. It's very energy intensive to train AI and then to deploy AI. Um, let's say that was fixed. If that was fixed, if it didn't take any energy at all, if it was free, then I would still be against AI. So, okay, so that's not my actual argument either, right? And so the next one, copyright issues. Okay, let's say we fix those. And I still don't want AI. I still don't want it. Like, even if we fix all of this garbage, like, I still don't want it. And so my argument against AI has a lot more to do with human communication and the purpose of art and creativity. That's where I think AI, generative AI specifically, is erosion. It's eroding all of our creative work. And what I mean by that is like I think everything we create, everything we do, everything we make, um, like I don't know, I can pick up a random thing from my desk. Like, oh, here's a CO2 meter, for instance. People worked on this, you know? There's someone who designed every part of this thing. Someone did the design of the logo, someone worked on the interface, like the layout of that, all of the circuitry in here, all of the batteries. Everything here was created by people who were passionate about a project and they wanted to work on all of this. And so to me, everything we make as people has a story behind it. Like this object in my hand, if I wanted to find out how this relates to history and other people, I could go down that rabbit hole and I could find out how this relates to all of the people who contributed to this one device, right? Um, and I think a lot of art to me has value much because of that. Like when I see art made by people, it has value because I know that when I look at a piece of art, someone has put a lot of thought and effort into the thing that they're making. They put a lot of themselves into the art that they make. If it's visual art, if it's like a concept art for something, quite often you can see that person's, their sensibilities, what they enjoy doing, the kinds of lines they like drawing. I think that is beautiful. The fact that you can take anything in the world and that is a property of those things. I think that's really cool. And I get so much value out of that. I love going into like some random Wikipedia page and reading about some random object or a random project and just like getting the whole history there. I think that's really cool. And I think AI, like generative AI output has none of that. It is kind of like it's such an amalgamation of everything still, but and yet made by nobody at once, to the point where like the history of that thing is just erased entirely, and all you're left with is the prompt that someone entered to create that thing. Um, and so to me, it is quite literally just removing humanity from art. And that, I think, is why I don't like generative AI, specifically within art. And to some extent within programming as well, I would say. And so yeah, that's why I don't like it. I think it just takes away so much beauty in everything we make. And that's not even getting into everything related to communication. I think the sophistication of bots made with AI right now, I think is terrifying. The amount of manufactured consent you can create on social media platforms and the amount of misinformation you can make is staggering. Like it's already happened. Like this is why I'm not on Twitter anymore. I love Twitter. I thought it was great. I really like spending time there. But the bot issue and the misinformation I saw there was just it just got so overwhelming that I was just like, I can't stand this place anymore. It's just miserable. Um and and so there's just I haven't seen like almost any positive outcome from AI apart from we can be a little bit more productive. And so is the trade-off worth it? To me, I would just be like, not at all. Like, no way. Like there's I don't know how to weigh that equation, you know? Like I don't actually care if we're like ultra productive in everything we make. We don't have to be peak productive like in everything we do, especially speaking of burnout. Like you don't have to be that level of productive, especially not if it comes at the cost of like destroying something that people genuinely value. There's been art contests, there's been writing contests, all of those things that have shut down now because of generative AI. It's just made it so that it's impossible to vet people and it's impossible to actually get the human creativity out from all of that. Um, and I'm in a lot of art communities, so obviously my perspective on AI is a lot from the art angle. And so I just don't see anything positive come of it. Um, I think I didn't make this argument in the video, but I do think there are some use cases for AI that might be useful. But I think it should be treated almost like almost like nuclear technology or bioengineering research. These are highly regulated, fields of study and the technologies. And so I think AI should have been in that camp rather than, treating it as just, oh, it's just another tool. It's just another fun piece of technology. Yeah, and that's not even getting into all of the like practical like stuff that might happen to people's jobs, which is also something that we might be concerned about. But yeah, sorry for the long ramble, but yeah, that was that was that was the side of the argument that I feel like I didn't hear enough people talk about. I mostly heard people talk about copyright, environmental stuff, and it looks ugly or whatever. And so I feel like none of those really resonated with me, and I think that's why.
Okay. Okay. I would add on top of that that like if you use AI too much, especially in the programming scene, which is the
Mhm.
closest Gen AI scene to me, it's you start to like you stop learning and you just offload the learning to the AI and then you're not growing after using the AI. So you're halting your development as it is, and then that's it's another concern of using AI in this
Yeah,
ways.
I think there's definitely a risk of that, and also the hidden tech debt that you might run into. Of just you generate a bug that you're not familiar with the code, but you created it through an AI, and so there might be a bug in there, but you just assumed it would work, and so yeah.
Okay. What was the response then in the comments and in general in the social media?
It was a lot more positive than I thought it would be. I was honestly bracing for impact, and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna read the comments. I'm gonna turn off notifications on my phone. I'm gonna like go off grid and like walk in the forest for a while, or like I was fully preparing for that because I don't know. I'm in this weird. Uh, it, it's not always true that people who are tech artists are literally between tech and art at the same time, but I do genuinely feel like I am somewhere in between that space where, artists have for a long time been very outspoken against AI. A lot of people in tech have been kind of the opposite. They've been kind of supportive of AI, and it's like, oh, it's shit. This is really cool technology. Look at what it can do. And so I'm sitting there in the middle, and I'm like, hearing all of these arguments and whichever side I come out on in this debate, I feel like the other side is going to attack me, and so I'm like, well, whatever I do, it's going to be horrible. But I was actually surprised to hear that it was a really positive response. And I even got a bunch of comments from people like working at AI companies, who they were grateful that I expressed all of this, and they were glad to hear that argument. I also got, I think, three people also recorded voice memos and sent to me of sharing their thoughts. I've never had that happen for any of my videos, and so I think it just resonated with a lot of people, in a way that I just haven't really seen before in my videos. Like, obviously, a lot of my videos have been useful and educational, right? But I think this video hit people more on an emotional level. And I mean, it is an emotional video because I got emotional in the video, and so I guess it makes sense. But yeah, it was just really positive, overall. Um, Not that I read all the comments. I don't expose myself to like the newest comment on that video because I'm sure there's a bunch of garbage there. But yeah. But yeah, I was fully expecting a bunch of backlash, because people don't like it when you don't like the new technology that you really like. Like, if someone's been using AI, they get a lot of value and they have a lot of fun with AI, and maybe they generate AI art, and it's the first time they've been able to make art, and like it's not fun to have someone like shit on your thing that you like using. And so it makes sense for people to be upset if you're excited about AI. And so, yeah, it's just a really, really difficult topic, I think, to cover in a way that satisfies everyone.
Okay. Do you see any path forward that would satisfy um, these constraints, these issues with detaching the human element from Gen AI creating art? Like, do you see any policy that would help in this regard? Like, other than like banning banning all the Gen AI tools?
I think there are. Well, it's kind of the issues with generative AI is two-sided to me. One of them is the creative side. The other one is the communication side, like human communication. Um, so I think that the tools to solve either of these, I think, are different. So for in terms of creativity, I think creatively, to some extent, this has already started, which I'm really, really happy it has. But creatively, I think there should be a cultural pushback. I think there should be, if you're working at a studio, like a game development studio, and this has happened a lot, that at game studios, some higher up wants to start using AI. They're just like, oh shit, this is cool. We don't have to hire voice actors anymore. We can just use whatever AI for our voice acting. And and of course, in the eyes of a CEO, they might be like, we can save money. Like, that's what they're interested in, right? Technically, that's their job, I suppose. But I think if there's pushback from people, against that, I think that is a good thing. I think there genuinely should be pushback for certain things. Um, we have things like that in society in general, like, um, cheating. If you cheat on someone, we generally shame that behavior. That's a shitty behavior. You shouldn't do that. And we are right to shame people for cheating on someone. But I wouldn't say that cheating should be illegal, right? And so I think AI to me is sort of in a similar category of, it's going to be near impossible to legislate. I have no clue what a law would look like to like outlaw this kind of thing. I think the closest you get is probably the data collection stuff of just not allowing, data collection in general without consent. I think that that's probably the only legal avenue that I can see this going down. But other than that, I think the cultural pushback is the strongest tool we have, really, because the profit motive is what it is. People are going to want to make money. People are going to cut corners. And if they can make money with less time and effort and employees, then people are going to do that. It just makes sense. And so there has to be cultural pushback. I want people to treat it as a shameful thing. If a company uses AI in their video game, there should be shaming of that company, and I think rightfully so. Um, and I'm glad that that started to happen. I think there are, there was some trailer. I think, was it for Arc, like an expansion to Arc, the video game that was released at GDC, and it was like I didn't see it, but I just heard that it was almost entirely AI generated, from what I remember,
I don't
which got
know.
a lot of pushback from what I could tell, at least. I might
Yeah.
be misremembering what game it was, but there was some trailer at GDC that was AI generated, and I was glad to see pushback from that. Like it should, like yeah, fuck that. There's so many like talented people in this industry. There's so many people who would love to create trailers. There's like give it to literally any game developer student if they or someone who's a fan in your community who would love to work on a trailer for their favorite game. Like there's so many people out there that could do this thing in a way that would preserve all the humanity and all the creativity and all the flaws we have in the work that we create. Why not do that? Like it would just be awesome, and it would be, again, a celebration of humanity. Like we're creating things together. But instead, someone typed something into Sora or something to generate some AI video that has like zero humanity. It's just like, oh, okay, here we got another slop video where I don't know, it's just soulless. And so I'm glad there's pushback. That I think that it should exist. But yeah, and then the other side of it, which is the human communication one, this one is hard. I think the problem of you're familiar with the alignment problem, right?
Yeah.
I guess for those who are not familiar, the alignment problem is the idea that if you develop a sufficiently smart enough AI, you're going to have to make sure that it's aligned with human interest, because otherwise a rogue AI might actually go against our interests. And if it's an intelligence that's smarter than humans, we're going to create our new overlords. So the um, oh shit, sorry, I completely lost track of what I was talking about.
The human communication part of it.
Yeah, the human communication part. What was the alignment problem? So people have talked about this as the alignment problem, that we need to make sure that our AIs are aligned with humanity. And so uh like I don't see why this is even a discussion, because we haven't solved the human alignment problem yet. Like, how are we supposed to solve aligning an AI if humans aren't aligned yet? Like, humans haven't aligned for so long, and we're somehow expecting an AI to be alignable within our current paradigm and our like way of communicating. Um, and so we've had, as a society, a huge misinformation problem already on social media. And right now, I think generative AI, with all of the like sophisticated technologies to make social media accounts legitimately look like real people, I think that is dangerous. It's already caused harm. It's likely already flipped the US election, and now we can see the results of that, which is a disaster. Um, and so this is a real problem. And I don't exactly know what the right solution is here. The only thing I can think of that the only thing I can think of which has a bunch of problems, but I think the problems might outweigh the benefits of. I think, especially on big social media platforms, I think there should be a way to verify people's identities. That there should be a way to ensure that these are real accounts of real people. Um, Kind of the original intent of the verification thing on Twitter, except actually work instead of just being able to pay for it, right? Um, I think there should be some way to ensure that your account is verified human, basically. And if you want to be anonymous, then you're going to be in the same pool as the bots, which kind of sucks if you really want to be anonymous. But I think something like that, I think something like that is the only way we can battle um, the bots right now, because attention gets you money. Bots are cheap, and you want to be able to influence people. And if you can influence people cheaply and get attention cheaply, people are going to do that with bots. And so I don't really see a way around that apart from some way for humans to like find each other in the mist of garbage.
All right. All right. Let's
Sorry if
close.
I'm a bit of a doomer and a boring,
Uh,
like sad person.
no,
I don't like AI.
no, like the AI the AI aspect is now difficult. There's so many things changing, and it's quite understandable that a lot of people are scared and
Mhm,
expecting bad things to happen. And it's more of a, I guess, like temperament and personality where you align on whether you
mhm,
expect things to the positives will outweigh the negatives or the other way around, right?
mhm.
That's tricky.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I would hope that everybody would agree that misinformation is bad, but at this point,
Yeah.
I don't even know if people agree
Exactly.
that misinformation is bad. So I don't
Yeah.
know. There was one really famous voice actor who sold his voice to an AI company for them to use in their
Oh,
product.
really?
Yeah, and people were like, "Dude, really? Like, are you doing this?" Like, um, yeah, it's another one of those things where like it's a remove humanity button. Like you can make just remove humanity from something and it's going to be so much cheaper and you can just generate someone's voice. And for for people who don't care about the creative side of things, who don't care about the art of creating video games or whatever it is you're working on, then it's just a money saver. And I think it's just sad because I don't know if enough people care enough about the creative aspect of things and the humanity of things. That's my big worry, um, especially when it comes to companies.
But it might be that uh, if the leading solutions start to do that, at least on the quality side, now the generated things will be of less quality, and then
Hmm.
gradually the smaller indie productions, whether it's games or movies or anything else, will start to become the leading ones because they will be
Hmm.
of high quality. The tricky part will be when
Yeah,
the
but
Gen
then the
AI,
question is when the AI is of high quality,
yeah,
right?
yeah, and then you
Yeah.
don't even know.
Yeah, and then people do have, there's a lot of people who argue that like if the AI voices genuinely create really good output, then I think there is an argument to be said that like it would be easier for a smaller indie studio to have voice acting in their game with that tool because it's going to be cheaper and easier, and they don't have to like they might not even afford to hire voice actors, um, and so that would kind of be the argument, and I think that is partially true. I think that if their vision is to have voice acting, and that's really important in their project, I think it is true that it would give them a tool that makes it easier for them to see their vision come to fruition, I guess, right? But then there's a secondary question of should we want to have AI voices? Like, is that really what we want in the future? And there's another argument of like there's creativity in limitations, and I know most people hate to hear this. I hate it when people tell me this, but if you can't afford voice acting, that's going to force you to do something else, and um, I think what people are going to come up with is usually fine and good in different ways. Like you don't have to. Um, I don't know why you would. People were able to make games before AI, and so somehow it worked out. And so I don't think it's necessary in any sense of the word. Um, yeah, but I do think that it's true that it is making it easier for people to like create their vision, at least on a surface level. I think. Um,
There was a
as much as I
question.
wish it wasn't true, but yeah, sorry, continue.
There was a question about given the state of generative AI as it is now, uh,
Mhm.
could you imagine ways to incorporate generative AI tools in your day to day? And I think I remember from your video that you mentioned that you do use AI at some point
Mhm.
for various things. So maybe you can speak a little bit on that note.
Yeah. Right now, I use ChatGPT as a replacement for search engines. That's I think that's my only use case for AI right now. Um, because sometimes when you Google for stuff or you search for stuff online, you just get garbage results, and it's really, really difficult to find anything. And so usually I use ChatGPT for some things where there's I don't want to use the word understanding, but ChatGPT has a way of understanding like semantic context in a way that search engines don't. Um, and so like a very common problem with search engines is that if you have a problem with some tech thing or whatever, let's say your cursor suddenly doesn't want to move vertically. You can only move it horizontally. And you're like, why is this happening? I want to figure this out. And then you Google for it. You search uh, you know, um, Windows cursor only move horizontally or whatever. Um, a very common problem might then get in the way of you of like other people might have a very very similar problem that's not your problem. Like you only find like the entire first page is just people who are like, I can only move my cursor vertically, like it's only vertical, I don't know. And you're like, okay, but mine is horizontal, like what, where? And you're like scrolling through and they're trying to find like page 3, and it's like nobody's having the same problem, but they're having a very very similar adjacent problem. Like that is when Google just doesn't work at all. And I kind of hate it when that happens. And so one thing that ChatGPT can do is that it can let you be more precise with your search queries. It's not just keywords. This time you can tell it to, I don't want to find this thing. I want to find this thing, right? So usually I use it for certain things like that. I use it sometimes when I more as a thesaurus kind of thing. Like if I forget a word, like I can search in very like precise autistic terms for things that are like just words that I want to find, but I couldn't really figure it out. It's like on the tip of my tongue, and I want to like, yeah, add as much context as possible to find that word. Um, yeah, it might be stuff like, oh, I want to find the word for a thing that's kind of like a crosshair, but it's sort of similar to the word ridiculous, and I'm looking for the word reticle or something. Like it
Okay.
could be something like that, and like that kind of stuff is just impossible on Google. So it's sort of use it sometimes to remind myself of words that I forgot, and as a very coarse search when Google fails. That's basically it, I think. I don't use it for programming. I don't use it. Actually, I tried it once for a C++ thing, and I regret it. Uh, it might
Wh-
just be that I regret C++ in general, but it was also that. So yeah,
what
I just haven't
happened?
had a lot of success with it.
What happened that you regretted it? Regret
I
using?
just it just I was trying to figure out how to I was trying to figure out how to it's a C++ plugin for Unity, and I needed to make it in C++ because I needed access to the rendering device, the D3D rendering device, which you don't get access to through C Sharp. I needed access to that to create a swap chain in a new Windows window. And then I wanted to render a render target into that window, a render target from Unity. That was what I needed C++ for. And there was some of the stuff around like creating swap chains and like blending images to that. And I was like, I just wanted a starting point for like what search terms to even use. And so then I used ChatGPT to get like a first draft. Um, and then I ended up spending so much time like debugging this AI code, and I'm just like, why would I inflict this upon myself repeatedly? I'm like, this sucks. I don't like what happens is that I start trusting the code that it gave me, and then it gave me like 2 lines that were just not correct. And so, but I don't know how to write a swap chain. Like this is the first time I'm doing this, and so I'm like misled by these 2 things and trusting these 2 lines. And so I'm spending all this time just like debugging that, and um, I don't know. And it's just also kind of embarrassing in general like, I don't know, if someone asks me, if I'm asking for help somewhere and I'm like, I don't know why this is not working. And I'm like showing them the code and they're asking, oh, so why did you put these two lines here? And I could be like, I didn't, I gave it to an AI and it gave me garbage back and I have only myself to blame, and I put on the like dummy hat, like I don't know. It's just embarrassing. I don't want to do that again, you know.
So
Yeah.
this ties very well to the question that I have for you. Now with ChatGPT available, you can easily start learning a subject like shaders by
Hmm.
just talking to an AI. But you never know, never know. You're quite kind of confident that it gives you the good answers until you reach the point where it don't, and it's
Hmm.
like, oh, this was false, and now I learned it after like painful hours of debugging. Oh, how did you learn shaders? From which resources? And if you were to do it now, what would you recommend?
Oh God, it was such a long time ago. I started out in the Unreal Engine, so I was using the Material Editor there, which was a node-based editor, so it was visually connecting nodes. And that was kind of the first time I did shaders at all. At the time, I was doing a lot more environment art and level art, so I was more of a 3D artist at that time. Um, and then I was getting into shaders through the material editor. That was kind of my first time. And a lot of it was probably honestly just the Unreal documentation, looking at existing shaders that people made in the material editor, and experimenting a lot on my own. I'm very much a practical person. I like learning by doing, and I tend to get bored too quickly if I just try to learn by, reading through something or watching tutorials. And I don't know. I just want to get into it and start creating and experimenting because that's where I thrive the most. I might not learn the most efficiently, but just enjoying it adds so much to me. And so yeah, that was kind of where I started doing that, which was, it was not really shader programming in terms of typing letters, but it was shader programming in terms of, you know, um, creating all of the functions like dot products and cross products and colors and lerps and all of the things you use in shader programming. So it's very similar in that regard. It was just that I wasn't typing it out; I was creating nodes, which it's to me, I would say that it is a form of shader programming. It's just a little bit different. And then um, I after Unreal, I switched over to Unity, and I was very disappointed to see that there was not a node-based shader editor in Unity. And so I was like, well, shit, this kind of sucks because I liked the shader editor. But I was getting into C Sharp at the time. I was then looking into shaders and also tool development to be like, okay, can I make my own plugin for Unity to get a shader editor in Unity? Um, and turns out, yes, it is possible to do that. And so that's what I did with ShaderForge, which, started out as an experiment for just because I wanted node-based shader editing. Because like once I learned how to write shaders by hand, I was like, well, this is kind of dumb. I don't want to make something visual using text. Like why would I do that? Like I like the little visual previews that I get in my notes because I'm fundamentally creating something visual. Um yeah, and so even after I learned like the basics of shader programming, I was like, well, I still prefer the node-based shader programming because it's more intuitive, especially for artists. Um like I think these days I don't really do a node-based editing anymore. But I think that's mostly because I've done it so much that like I have the visuals in my head. I don't need them on screen. And also you get the benefits of using a text editor, like being able to, select and copy paste and rewrite things very easily. Um, but yeah, so that was my introduction to shaders. And then I think reading, it was again the same thing there. Whenever I wanted to get a certain effect, I was just reading existing shaders, like some of the shaders that Unity came with, some other people's shaders. Unity forums were really, really good for resources. Um, Shout outs to Ben Golis, because he's just been a regular that everybody like he's like that one like supporting pillar in the XKCD comic, like supporting the entire Unity community in terms of shaders. Yeah, so there were a lot of like people and early documentation. Actually, the documentation was really bad for shaders back then. But um, so yeah, the documentation, I didn't rely on the documentation actually. No, it was mostly the forums and like dissecting Unity's shaders that led me to that.
I don't think the documentation improved much now. If it's like HLSL with the new rendering pipeline, and then in the back it's like GLSL. It's like,
It's it was worse. At least this time it exists. Now it exists and it's ambiguous. But back then it just didn't exist. There was like, yeah, very, very minimum. So,
okay. So you started experimenting, and especially in the
mhm,
visual note, and then you learned, and then you switched to the code version, and after having already experience with doing that. Okay. Okay.
mhm.
How would you recommend people learn it now?
Shaders?
Yeah.
Whatever you're the most comfortable with, I think. If you're from a programming background, I think you'd prefer to write shaders by hand. If you're from an art background, I think node-based editors are probably the way to go. I think both are capable at this point. I think, well, it depends on the editor you're using. There's trade-offs between the two as well. Like, if you're in Unity and you're writing shader code by hand, you're generally going to be missing out on some of the features that you might expect to have. Like for instance, if you want to make a shader that has lighting applied to it, that is a lot more complicated if you're writing a shader by hand than if you're using a node-based shader editor. So with the nodes, there, Unity is going to insert code for you for all the lighting stuff and the depth passes and all of that stuff. And so I think if you want to learn like the basic structure of shaders and how what the hardware or like what shaders look like when you run them on the hardware, like writing it by hand is better for that. And if you want the most flexibility. But if you're coming more from the artistic perspective, or you just want to learn the like mathematics behind some of the stuff you do in shaders, then node-based editors are generally a lot more visual and a lot more intuitive. And they're practically really useful for like actual projects as well. The stuff that I do where I mostly code my shaders by hand, but that's also because my environment that I use my shaders in is these days pretty different from what it is in games. Because I don't have to use lighting in my projects because most of my projects right now is my animation projects, like my spline video and my Bezier curve video. That's all made in Unity, and that's vector graphics. It's just flat shaded colors. You have a bunch of shaders, but there's no lighting system that has to be like managing if you're using deferred rendering or if you're using forward rendering, like, or then picking the right light sources and working with light maps. Like, I don't need any of that, right? Because I don't have lighting in my scene, right? um and even in my like now that I'm working on my 3D editor, it's like I don't need lighting there either. It's just like it's all custom shaders, and I have full control over the environment and the lighting. So, but that's different if you're making a game, because if you're making a game, then you're almost certainly going to be using some form of lighting, whether that's environmental light or light maps or dynamic lights. And so then it's really really useful to have the node-based shader editor because it gives you all of those things that you expect to work in that environment. It just gives you that, for free in terms of work, right?
How did it look like to create an asset plugin and then maintain it over years? And you can also include, if you want, the financial aspect, like was this financially viable option, like to make assets for a living, if somebody would like this as a career option? Like, how did it look like? And then maybe we'll also go to the shapes situation, but let's talk about ShaderForge.
Um, ooh, yes, it was very much financially viable. It was, um, I forget the exact numbers, but I think I was selling it for $80 per unit, I guess. And it was selling basically two full-time salaries
Oh,
at that
really?
point. Yeah. When it was like in the beginning. Well, obviously there's usually like a spike in the beginning, and then there's a spike on every sale. Um, like when there's a 50% off sale or whatever, that's when you make most of your sales. But on average, it was basically two full-time salaries. And so, um, me and my partner at the time, or my ex once removed, we decided to start a company, and that was Neat Corp. And what eventually led to budget cuts and all of that. So basically, the ShaderForge was what funded Knee Corporation to begin with. So it was absolutely viable to do it. And I think there was, Unity was growing a lot at the time. I think it might be a little bit hard to like look back and think of Unity as like the small little underdog indie company, but it literally was at the time. It was basically the vibe that Godot has today is what Unity had back then, of the smaller indie friendly game engine. And so I think I was just really lucky to kind of hit that like time period in Unity's lifetime where, you know, I didn't know Unity would blow up like a lot, like the way it did. And blow up positively as in grow. It did eventually also blow up negatively, but that's a different story. But the in the beginning there was, I think there was so much growth, there were so many people starting to use the engine, and people like me who came from Unreal and was missing the shader editor. And so I think I was just really lucky in that, just a combination of those things. So people actually wanted it, there was a huge demand for it. Um and uh, and then also just the timing of it in general, and the fact that I could make it. I actually finished creating the product that I wanted to make, right? Like I made ShaderForge, and so it exists, and so that's usually a good step along the way to making something. And so I think all of those just kind of, it was just a confluence of things at the same time that just made it so that, yeah, it's kind of wild that, like, I don't know, it's like ShaderForge was the industry standard shader editor for a few years, which is kind of mind-boggling to think about. But yeah, and obviously um one of the weird things about making a tool is that I don't, as the tool developer, I don't get to hear about and see everything people make in it. I sometimes people like mention me or tag me somewhere in the stuff they make, but I have no idea what people are making. So I just see the sales numbers and I'm like, oh shit, it's actually really huge. People are buying it left and right. But I have no idea what people make with it. And so I remember I was at GDC at some point, um, and I was talking to someone. I think it was, yeah, it was someone at Blizzard who they were like talking to me. They were like, "Oh, we're huge fans of your thing," and I was like, "Oh, that's awesome." And they were like, "Oh yeah, we use ShaderForge at work at Blizzard," and I was like, "What?" Like, okay. And then like later there were people at Valve who also talked to me, and they were like, "Oh yeah, it's really useful. It's kind of nice." And I was like, "I didn't even know you used Unity. Like any of you. Like what's happening?" Like it was like, and, I was apart from ShaderForge, I was basically nobody. Like I was still like at the tail end of, school, and I wanted to like get into the industry, and then have these like industry giants who were using my tool was mind-boggling. I was like, what is happening? This is so weird. And also, why didn't you tell me? I would love to know this. I would have loved to know that like all of you guys are using it, but obviously there's no obligation for them to tell me,
Yeah.
right? And so I don't know. It was just a really humbling and bizarre and fun experience. But then obviously the flip side of that is, of course, that it has a huge audience, which means that there's a bunch of support tickets of people having issues with it. And dear Lord, I mean, it did become a full-time job for a while, like especially when it was at its peak. And um one of the hardest things for me to work out is like, how much should I help people with Unity? You know, where
Oh
like
yeah.
I'm getting a bug report of a thing that actually has nothing to do with ShaderForge. They're having a Unity issue and they just don't know how to use Unity, and they're using my tool in a context that's just incorrect. And so I ran into a lot of those like Twilight Zone issues where like, yeah, this is not really a bug in ShaderForge. This is more of a Unity thing. And I have to explain to people that no, this does not work when you're using deferred rendering. I actually have a thing about that in the documentation here, but you didn't read that, I suppose, which is fine. But also here I am spending time on answering this.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I to some extent I still have that problem with shapes, um, but yeah, that was tricky, and eventually, like, eventually I did. It was around the time we were going to release Budget Cuts, the game that we were working on at Necorp. Eventually the sales were dwindling, not that much, just a little bit, and I was feeling that was my first burnout around the tail end of the lifetime of ShaderForge and nearing release of budget cuts. That's when I was like, I'm feeling way too stressed about all of this. I have to let go of ShaderForge. And I think at that time it was 2018. I think around that time was when Unity was about to release their own shader graph. So I'd sort of assumed that like it would just my sales would probably plummet at that point anyway. And so that's when I decided to just open source ShaderForge and not sell it anymore, which I still don't know if I regret that. I haven't decided yet because it was still selling pretty well, and I'm a little bit bummed out that I didn't have that income at that point. But whatever, it's fine.
Would you think that
Um,
would it be possible for you to compete with Shader Graph?
To some extent, yeah. There's some people who still use ShaderForge today. I don't know if you've seen the Falconeer. Thomas Sala worked on that. He's obsessed with ShaderForge. He's been using it and still use it for his projects. And I'm like, I'm surprised it even works at this. But yeah, there's people who stick around for those. Like you kind of find your favorite, and then many people stick to it. So there was kind of, ShaderForge, and then shortly after, the biggest competitor was Amplify Shader Editor, and then Unity's own shader graph. Before ShaderForge, there was actually one more called the Strumpy Shader Editor, which was that was not a visual node-based editor. It was just nodes without visuals on it, um, which was kind of like the very first node-based shader editor for Unity. But I think it was abandoned at some point because Tim Cooper, who worked on that, he was hired by Unity, presumably to make shader graph, but he made the new UI tools first and then shader graph. And so maybe there was some kind of weird like blessing there where ShaderForge had its time in the spotlight. But yeah,
How much time did it take for you to develop the first version before you started selling it?
the first version of ShaderForge.
Yeah.
Um, well, I had a closed beta at some point. Um, I don't know. I think the first beta might have not taken that long. I would guess maybe a year from start to release, but the beta was probably before then. I think. It's hard to
Okay.
remember. It was a long time ago now.
Okay. 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 Then you open sourced ShaderForge at some point, and it was
Mhm.
in the year of 2000. I don't want to mess it up. 14.
ShaderForge was released in 2014, I
Yeah.
think, and then 2018 was the release of budget cuts, and I want to say that ShaderForge was open sourced somewhere around there.
Okay.
I would guess, yeah.
Okay.
So either
Okay.
2017 or 2018, I think.
Okay. And then you stopped doing the support as well.
Yes, that was the primary reason I wanted to stop working on it because I feel like I don't know, like yeah, I could have kept on selling it and then just not provided support, but that feels really shitty. Like I just morally, I couldn't like live with myself, and it was like stressing me out, and so financially, it was a stupid decision to make it open source, but morally, I think it was the right thing to do. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So now on to the shapes.
Mhm.
Maybe before we go very deep into the asset side of things, maybe you can tell the difference for everybody who is interested in the vector graphics and the standard bitmap graphics.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, so bitmap graphics is usually revolving around textures, which is kind of like PNG files or JPEG files. It's basically a grid of colors. That's all images generally are. And so they tend to have a limited resolution. So if you want to zoom in on any of these images, it'll usually become either blocky or blurry because you can't like add more data between the squares of colors, all the pixels, right? Or technically texels, if you want to be pedantic about it. Um, and so that's what textures are, and that's usually called raster graphics. And so uh, that's used for most things in the games, I would say. Like we use textures pretty much everywhere. But for certain things, you might want to use something that is more scalable, where you can zoom in however far you want, and it's not going to get blurry or pixely. It's just going to stay, crisp, no matter how much you zoom in. And so that style of graphics is usually called vector graphics because now the what defines the shape is no longer, a grid of colors. Now it's a mathematical formula or a combination of multiple formulas. And so basically what it gives you is that it gives you quote unquote infinite resolution of your graphics. But the downside is that it's usually a bit more simple in terms of the types of shapes you can make because it has to be like mathematically defined. And so you can use vector graphics for like very simple shapes like circles, lines, boxes, like rounded boxes. Like there's a bunch of simple shapes that you can kind of define easily through math. And that's what I did with Shapes. So Shapes is a vector graphics tool for Unity. It's kind of like if you imagine HTML5 canvas where you can just type in or processing like P5.js, for example, like just typing in draw circle here, and then you draw a circle there, and then you can zoom in or you can like make it however big you want, and there's no texture that has to like rasterize this circle. Um, it's all just rendered on the fly. And so yeah, that's what Shapes is, which is why that was my second plugin for Unity.
What's the state of shapes now in terms of the availability on the asset store and then the future of the plugin?
It's on the asset store. I am a couple months behind on support right now. I I should be working on that. And there was actually a really bad regression in the last update that I fixed, but I just haven't pushed it yet because I feel like there's other things I should fix before then. And so I'm just very behind on support. But I did add the hotfix to the support website, so people can find the hotfix if they want to fix it. But yeah, I'm a little bit behind on it, primarily because a lot of my tools I develop them alongside using them in some of my projects. And right now, the shapes has reached a point where I don't really need to change it that much. I've been using it and it works fine. And because I'm on the developer version, I have the latest bug fixes,
No.
unlike all of my suffering audience out there who's using the shitty version of last update. Um, but yeah, so usually my motivation and my drive to like update those tools comes from the fact that I'm using them myself and I run into issues and then I want to fix them. Um, but yeah, Shapes right now is a little bit wonky, but it's mostly fine. Like most people have it working just fine, and so it's not even close to the amount of support that I got, support requests that I got for ShaderForge, and so I'm happy about that. Yeah.
Technically speaking, how does it look like? Uh, what does it look like to push an update? Is this like a Unity plugin that you package and then you send to Unity Asset Store, or is that like a Git repository somewhere where you upload the code, or how does it look like?
Yeah, they have it's called like Asset Store Uploader. It's like it's a tool in Unity. And then you
Okay.
basically select which folder is all of your plugin stuff. And then it packages it and uploads it. And then on the Asset Store website, you can type in like your changelog and the version and all of that stuff.
Do you have a way to preview your changes in a sort of like pull request fashion before you update them, or it's like YOLO?
I don't think so. It might show it for assets, like which assets have been added or removed, but not more granular than that. And it's not like a Git changelog or something.
Okay.
I mean, I have that in my repository because I do use the Git repository for the project, but I don't think the asset store tools have that.
Okay. Okay. So now you're spending some time on working on ShaderForge when there's good mood and motivation to handle the support. And you mentioned something about 3D editor.
Hmm.
Can you tell me more about it?
Yeah, so I am working on a 3D modeling tool for 3D modeling.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
H-
Uh, the, how do I pitch it? I haven't worked out a good elevator pitch yet. Usually when I'm talking to artists, usually my elevator pitch is that I'm going to make a 3D editor that has a UV editor that doesn't want to make you jump off a cliff. And most artists are like, holy shit, that sounds great. Please give me this tool. Um, yeah, so I'm working on a 3D modeling tool called Half Edge, and it is designed to be a modern 3D editor in the sense that most 3D editors that people use today, like including Maya, 3D Max, Blender, these are huge pieces of software that have years of baggage, and none of them are designed for game developers. Game developers use them, but they were never designed for game developers. And so, as a game developer, you're always this like second-class citizen in all of these like software packages. And so I wanted to make a modern version of those. I want to make the Procreate of 3D modeling. I don't know if you've used Procreate. It's a illustration tool on the iPad where
Oh yeah.
I think the obvious question that everybody's asking me is, why would I pay for your tool when I could use Blender? Blender is free.
Yeah.
And if I look at a text document listing all the features in Blender, and I look at a document listing all the features in your tool, Blender has more tools and it is free. So like, why would I get your thing? And I get it. That's a very reasonable question to ask, but I think I'm so used to talking to artists. This is not going to land well with you, I think. But there's an analogy where like I'm trying to think if there's a programmer equivalent. Probably not, or maybe there is. But usually it's like, if you take a look at some other open source software like GIMP, for example. Are you familiar with GIMP?
Yeah.
Yeah, so GIMP is sort of designed to be like a Photoshop replacement that is free. It's open source, and so costs nothing. And if you list all the features of GIMP, it has a lot of features. It's got a bunch of stuff that you can do in GIMP. And then you list the features in Procreate, the illustration app on iPad. It's got way fewer features. The difference, though, is that everybody hates GIMP and everybody loves Procreate. And so there's something there that's not just the features, there's something there that's not just the price that makes people like one over the other. And that is the same distinction that I want to make from my 3D modeling tool. I think, a lot of these tools are huge hydras. They are kind of like the fractal switchblades of so many tools for so many different people, where Blender is kind of like an aircraft panel, and then you press a button and you get another aircraft panel, and then you press the hotkey somewhere, so now you're in a different mode, but you don't know how to exit that mode or what even the context of the mode is. And like there's so much complexity to all of these tools that I think if you are a game developer and you want to make something that is a little bit more simple, and you don't care about cinematic fog simulation, then you're not going to have to deal with that in my program, because I'm not going to add cinematic features, because this is for game developers. Um, and so the same goes for UV editors. I don't understand. I don't understand why UV editors in 3D modeling tools are so awful. They are actually so bad. And there's have you done any 3D modeling? Do you know what a UV editor
I've
is?
unfortunately needed to do some UV modeling, like UV mapping, and like
Mhm,
the amount of like keys that I was supposed to press at the same time and like keep in mind what I'm doing on which part of the Blender
mhm.
app, it was too much. It was too much. I just
Yeah.
wanted to get back to code when I have letters, and I just typed the letters.
Yeah, and I feel like I must be missing something, because usually when I don't know, when most people have this thing where like, I don't know, this thing seems stupid. Like usually there's an explanation there. Usually there's something you're missing or something I'm missing, that explains why the stupid thing is designed the way it is. And you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I wasn't aware of this thing. But for UV editors, I haven't figured it out. I genuinely don't know why they're so awful. I think the closest explanation I can come up with is that game developers are uniquely in need of a UV editor in a way that requires a lot of fine control that most people who use UV editors don't need. I think that's the thing. Um, That I think that's it, because, like, if you're doing, like, cinematic assets, you're probably gonna be pretty okay mostly using automatic UV unwrapping because you can use whatever resolution of textures you want. But if you're a game developer, you might want very precise, precisely snapped UV coordinates to all of your textiles and whatnot. Um, and yeah, like even a simple thing like, okay, let's say you have a bunch of vertices in a model, and you've done an automatic unwrap of your object, and you have the UV shell in front of you and the UV editor, and you just want to take a bunch of vertices and you want to flatten them horizontally so that they're all along a straight line. That's it. Like, I don't even think most UV editors have that as a
Mhm.
built-in feature. And I'm like, why? This is like everybody who's a programmer or a tool developer knows how to find the average position and then put all the positions at that average. Like it's a ridiculously easy thing to implement. um like it's arguably harder to like do the UI design. Like, where do I put the button? That's almost harder than implementing the code for like aligning those vertices. Why is that not a built-in feature? It's so useful and so common to align your UVs to parts of your texture, and those are usually aligned with texels. And so yeah, it's weird. I don't get it. And so everybody who's using Maya or Blender for game development, they always have to use plugins for UV editing because the default tools are just not good. But anyway, and so I want to make a nice UV editor
Okay.
in my 3D modeling tool.
What are the other examples of things that are difficult in Blender and Maya for game development? Or like what would be the game development features that are used the most and have not necessarily the best support?
Um, I think it's not really the a lack of support for things. I think it's mostly the stuff that gets in the way. I forget exactly um, how the transforms are set up in Blender and Maya, but I recall something about the way that object hierarchies in Maya and object hierarchies in Blender, they both have this extra matrix transformation on top of it that I think it's for like animation purposes. You can add another layer of a matrix to transform an object. Um, that adds a layer of indirection and a place where you can, it's like, I was going to say it's like C++, where there's like foot guns everywhere. And so that's generally not a good idea to put foot guns everywhere. And so technically it's possible to do everything that people do in games in Blender and Maya. It's just that you have to be aware of a bunch of things like this, where like, oh, I have to freeze all of the transforms, or I have to reset all the transforms before I export this to the game engine. Um, Another thing is that like there's a bunch of conventions when it comes to the 3D axes. This is something I've talked about probably way too much online. Axes have a convention for, is Y up, is Z up, are we using a left-handed coordinate system or a right-handed coordinate system? And funnily enough, or maybe not so funnily enough, like Unity is left-handed Y up, and Unreal is left-handed Z up. Blender is right-handed Y up, I think. No, left-handed Z up. Uh, and then Godot, or no, Blender is right-handed Z up, I think. Godot is right-handed Z up. Blender is right-handed Y up. So all four of them have different coordinate systems. So if you're working in Blender, Unity, Unreal, and Godot, none of them agree on the coordinate system. And so importing and exporting, it's very, very, very common that you export a model and then you open it in your game engine and it's like on its side. The character is like just on its side, and you have to be like, okay, where is the issue? Um, yeah. And so oh yeah, Blender is Z up. Yeah, Blender and Godot are both Z up. Or no, are they? I forget exactly. Anyway, what's funny though is that Unreal is the only left-handed Z up I've been able to find. I haven't found any other tool that's left-handed Z up. But anyway, but yeah. So what I want to do in my 3D modeling tool, I want to have I want to make it so you can switch between them. You can select which one you want to use for whatever project you're working in. So if you start working in my modeling tool, I want you to have an option in the beginning of like, oh, I'm working in Unity, and then it just adapts to Unity. It's using the Unity coordinate system, or I work in Godot, and then it adapts to Godot. And um, so that you don't have to deal with all of those like weird conversion or export issues that people run into all the time. And so it might be a bad idea. I'm not sure yet. Hopefully, I'm not adding another layer of indirection that makes this even more complicated. But I think it's a good idea. Well, we'll see how it goes once I get to writing all of the export and import functionality. But yeah.
Okay. What state is this half edge, right? A half edge.
Mhm.
What's the state of half edge now? Where are you in the development process?
It started out as a Unity plugin, and then I made it standalone after a while. And in the process of porting it from being a plugin to being a standalone application, I managed to destroy a lot of things. So I used to have more progress than I do now, but I have a basic viewport, a 3D viewport. You can create meshes. You can select faces, select vertices, select half edges and edges, and move all of those around, rotate everything. I've been working a lot on the like infrastructure for making selection performant and also manipulation performant. So there's a bunch of stuff when it comes to if you're using Unity, you might be familiar with it, but you use native arrays and their job system, and also compute shaders to basically parallelize all the stuff that you shouldn't do in C Sharp. And so, because most of it is written in C Sharp. Um, and yeah, so I've been working on the basics. I have most of it up and running, but there's obviously a bunch of like mesh manipulation tools that I don't have yet. Like I have an extrude function, I have an inset function. I don't have a bevel function, so that's quite a lot more math I need to work on there for that. And so yeah, it's getting there. It's relatively usable right now if I just fix the bugs. But yeah, it's getting there. I think I'm hoping on very optimistically maybe an early access release later this year, or at the very least a beta version is the plan. I'm also going to showcase it in Spain in a month or so in what's it called, Malaga at Guadalindi. I'm going to be in a booth showcasing it,
Okay,
so that's
nice.
going to be exciting.
It's gonna be a conference there.
Yep, it's an indie game conference,
Okay,
and I'd say it's a local one, so it's mostly locals. So most of it is going to be in Spanish. But I was invited there last year to do a talk, and I really enjoyed it. And so this time I'm gonna go there and be part of the expo, and
nice,
people are
awesome.
gonna awkwardly try to speak Spanish with me, and I'm gonna have to apologize, like sorry, English only.
Okay,
But yeah.
awesome. We're reaching the end of the discussion, and you have been a great help for a lot of people trying to learn this stuff, math,
Mhm.
shaders. Uh, what would you say to all the people that are either struggling or trying to find resources to learn? How do you learn, and how would you recommend people continue to work and learn and stay on the development path?
Mm, Well, I would recommend my channel if you want to learn shader programming or mathematics for game developers or tool development. I think that would be the first step. Uh, Otherwise, I'm really bad at finding resources to recommend. I think I'm so focused on learning by doing, and it's always about like coaxing my own motivation into the right direction. Um, and so I don't know, people learn in different ways. That's the way that I learn. And so I think for me, learning has always been about wanting to reach a goal, and then learning is just something that I have to do in order to get there. I stumble over the things I have to learn. I don't intentionally focus on learning those things. And so if you want to learn shader programming, then like for example, for me, I would need a different goal. I need a goal like I want to set up a cool scene in Unity, and I want it to look very pretty, and I want to have like dynamic water, and I want to have nice lighting, and I want to have like vegetation shaders that sway in the wind or whatever you might want to do. Then in order to get there, you're going to have to learn how to do shaders, right? But to me, that's always been like the better like carrot to guide me in the right direction. Um, but obviously that requires you to have the basics down. Like you need the basics before you can start experimenting. But yeah, I would say get the basics down on my YouTube channel. I'm gonna plug that if you want to go there. It's on screen right here. Wookash like actually edited it in. It's very nice that it's right there. Um, so yeah, that is good to get the basics. And then once you're on your own, I would dissect some other shaders. If you find, Unity's shaders, you might learn by looking at those. And then also experiment. It's just fun. I enjoy experimenting with math, which all people might not, but for me, it's just fun to like see what happens. Like, what is a lerp? What is an inverse lerp? How does that, what does it mean to do inverse lerp on a color if that's in the T parameter? Like, I don't know. What if you shove in a texture in there? What's that going to look like? Like, there's so much that kind of happens by accident in shader programming. And also, one thing I really like is that shader programming is nice in that it compiles almost instantaneously. And so you get like super fast, like visual feedback whenever you edit something. You don't have to wait for a whole build process. And so iteration for shader programming is just really, really fun and nice. So I would totally recommend that. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Where can people follow you, your work?
You could probably search, I think, for my name. I have too many places to plug. And my website, it's acegikmo.com. So acegikmo.com. I've got almost all of my links there. Um, yeah, so I'm in many places online. I'm not really on Twitter anymore because of all the bots and the misinformation and just Elon Musk in general as a human being. Um, so I'm mostly on Blue Sky these days. So yeah, if you wanna follow me on Blue Sky, you can go there. Otherwise, YouTube for all of my videos, and I guess I'm on Twitch as well. Although I don't stream very often, so yeah.
How often and when do you stream?
It used to be that I streamed like a few years ago. I streamed like a few times a week, but now I stream like I don't know once every 3 weeks or something, like whenever I feel like it. And so it's not very often. I generally don't. Um, yeah, I generally don't stream that much. I think part of my burnout was realizing that I quite often streamed as a stressor. I wanted to put pressure on myself to get my work done. That's why I streamed so that I would, if people are watching, I can't just go off and do something else. I have to work. And so I used to use that as one of those like habitual pressure points, which is exactly what you're not supposed to do when you're
Mm.
recovering from burnout. It might be fine if you're not burnt out, but if you're burnt out, you should absolutely not do that. And so I just ended up like not streaming because I didn't, it is kind of stressful because there's a lot of people watching, they have comments all the time, and you want to be active and engage with people. And I feel bad if I don't do that, but I also want to get my work done. And so there's like so many pressures, like both in terms of my work and then social pressure. And then there's a camera, so I need to make sure that I don't look weird and sit weird or like off camera or like I I don't know, scratch my eye and smudge my makeup. Like there's so much stuff that I need to think about. So yeah, I don't know. It can be stressful, but it's also really fun. And so you kind of need to find a good balance there.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for having me.